So hey guys, what if Naruto kidnapped through Kaguya? This is second part of the series, so let's start the series. Contrary to popular beliefs, Boruto loves his father dearly. He was always there for them, playing with them, teaching his sister and him basic principles of ninja arts, and etched life lessons that he learned during his early childhood. Years before he took the hat were the happiest Boruto ever experienced because his hero and person who he most looked up to at the time was always present in his life. People across the entire world held his father in high regard and often told him about his accomplishments during his youth, specifically when Fourth Great Ninja War took place, after which he was labeled as hero and savior of the world. Thinking that some stories are exaggerated, he was a bit incredulous at first, but as time went by he realized that there was weight to their words. When he was a child, Boruto overheard his parents conversing about his mission that he took part in before he became Hokage a number of times. They often varied from A to S ranks, with occasional B rank now and then. That alone should have been proof of his father's capabilities as a shinobi. More surprising, however, was the duration of the missions and state in which his dad always returned. Not only did he return back to them in days' time, but injuries that regular ninja would sustain from such high-ranking missions were non-existent on him, which only enforced his view of his father's strength, view that, unfortunately, began diminishing over time. He was always called a bright and smart child, stemming from two powerful bloodlines. His abilities and potential as a ninja are second to none, and yet no matter how badly he wanted to create his own path and distinguish himself from his father, it still wasn't enough for people of the village to see him other than Naruto's son. Even when he learned shadow clones by himself, people were acting like it was a normal, everyday thing. Because it shouldn't be surprising that son of a war hero and strongest Kage in history learned B-rank technique before he even began academy, a technique that is used commonly by jonins to boot. It irritated him to no end. His blonde hair, whisker marks and blue eyes that strongly resembles his father's only made that task that much more difficult, and he constantly remained in his shadow despite his best efforts for others to see him in his own light. Every single person in the Konoha, even before his dad became head of the village, had high expectations for him, and Boruto was always pressured to deliver. Pressure that became heavier when his father finally achieved his lifelong dream by becoming Hokage. Slowly, admiration that he had for him began turning into resentment due to his absence from their lives that followed. If stories that he was told were true, he won battles in the war using only shadow clones. If so, then he should have no problem to create couple of clones that would take care of extra paperwork so that he could return home to them earlier. He refused, choosing to spend time in that dreadful office, drowned in piles of papers and leaving his mother to take care of them. So he acted out, pulling numerous pranks against him in desperate need for attention that was only given to him in form of regular lectures and scoldings that only angered him further. This cycle continued on for several months, years, even during his academy education, until Boruto chose to act indifferent towards their relationship, or better yet, lack of it. He didn't care about himself anymore or the pressure that others placed on him for being Hokage's son. However, he still remained upset when his father neglected his mother and sister. Unfortunately, that pressure returned tenfold when he was unable to stop White Setsu during Team 7's mission. That was first time that he felt utterly useless against his adversary. To become stronger, not only to beat his dad for sending Shadow Clone to his sister's birthday, but to pull his own weight in the exams and not to disappoint. He began his Rasengan training like Sasuke told him with Konohamaru's guidance. His attempt at making a rank jutsu was pitiful to say the least. He felt awful about, and that feeling only increased when Sasuke-san, despite his failure, still took him under his wing because of what Boruto believed was his status as Naruto's son. Boruto was a prodigy, and he knew that he had skills necessary to compete, but there was always a small voice in his head telling him that he isn't good enough, that B would fail and make a mockery of himself on international competition. His confidence was shaken from his inability to fight Setsu, and that was the moment he reached his breaking point and took Kote from Katasuke. He knew that it was wrong to cheat, but he was driven by his emotions at the time. You can't simply win when you're son of influential person such as Hokage, the great hero of the war. People want to see greatness from you, his family, friends, even his father wants to see him succeed despite not teaching him a single thing since he was a kid. If he won his fights, everyone would say that he did so because it was expected of him. He is the Hokage's son after all. Boruto can't even imagine how bad it would look if he fell in the second round to that team from Kirigakure. If he by any chance lost there, people would be disappointed. badmouth him and call him a disgrace to Hokage's name. His dad stripping him of his shinobi status and saying that he will talk to him later despite never doing so before made him snap. From academy days away, Ben Sarada told him to look at things from different perspective. Hokage wouldn't be put on such high pedestal and respected by every person alive if he didn't have skills necessary to back it up, by all means. Boruto disagreed with them because all evidence later on pointed to the contrary. After taking that job, his dad spent most of his time in the office and didn't do a thing to help out in their household. Leaving his mom to take care of everything, he slept in late, put on his shoes the wrong way and ate that ramen. To sum it up, he was really uncool in Boruto's eyes and not the image of war hero like everyone depicted him to be. Until recently, that is. Stories of old can't even compare to sheer power that his father displayed during invasion of two pale creatures with Byakugan. Boruto began seeing him in new light. His warm chakra coated everyone like shield to protect them from ensuring explosion that occurred afterwards. If he wanted to, he could have countered Black Orb with ease like Sasuke-san said, but everyone would die if he did it. From that statement alone, it was clear to Boruto that his father willingly chose to sacrifice himself to ensure others' safety, to protect his family. And he did just that. Seeing this, he slowly began realizing spiritual heritage that older generations, his father included, embodied will of fire, to treat everyone in the village as a family and for shinobi to believe, cherishes, and fight to protect the village, as previous generations had done before them. Although he disliked such ideal at first because he saw it only for a lame excuse for his father to neglect his true family, resolve in his dad's eyes and selfless attitude in face of certain death proved him otherwise. Now he can only hope that they can get there in time to help him defeat those invaders, that according to his father and Sasuke are members of same clan from which progenitor of Chakra herself originated from. Boruto knows that he shouldn't go because quite frankly he doesn't have any right to be involved in a fight with godly threats. But Sasuke-sen for God knows what reason vouched for him when other Kages were against it. Now he can do his best and provide assistance in any way possible if needed. Here is the plan. Sasuke's voice broke him from his thoughts as he looked on ahead. They recently jumped through the portal that his Rinnegan created and began traveling through different dimension. It honestly felt like something from Kajimasa movies that he often watched. If situation wasn't so serious, he would be more excited about opportunity to travel to different worlds. First we need to free Naruto. Although we can do to forced extraction, I can still strongly sense his chakra. 6 paths connection? Chojuro inquired. Correct, Shadow Hokage nodded. We can still sense each other because of yin and yang power Otsutsuki Hagoromo granted us in the war. Boruto raised a brow at this. He never would have thought that both his dad and master obtained power from father of shinobis. He shook his head as his blue eyes took more determined look. This was not the time to concern himself with such trivial things. As we all already know, we will be facing 3 Otsutsuki, each with their own unique set of skills. Sasuke continued. I recommend me taking care of the one with the fishing rod, seeing that I have most experience dealing with the Rinnegan and can quickly evade his attacks that steal jutsu due to my speed and Rinnegan teleportation. Aren't we a little arrogant? Kuratsuchi playfully commented and Sasuke responded with a smirk. From what you told us about Kinshiki's abilities, it would be wise for Chojuro and me to face him, Tsuchikage supplied, feeling rush of excitement traveling throughout her body. Even as a respected Kage, she still retained boisterous approach in fights against strong opponents. Chojuro's mastery over Kenjutsu will keep him busy, and since he doesn't have any absorption power like other two, I'm free to use my earth and lava release. Speaking of which, Mamoshiki's ability to absorb ninjutsu will be quite problematic for all of us. Gaara's monotone voice added, that's why I will be most adequate to fight him. My San can keep him at bay since he can't absorb it, while Darui overwhelms him with his taijutsu. Sasuke nodded, satisfied at their plan before he turned to his apprentice, Boruto. For the time being you stay aside. If we all fall then you need to act and use your Rasengan. Boruto's face took more of a somber look at his statement. But my Rasengan is... Don't worry about it, Sasuke interrupted him with a smile. Just trust me. Right, he nodded, seeing the end of portal fastly reaching. They exited Sasuke's portal and began dropping towards the ground, their eyes widening as disbelief at sight of massive destruction and ruined stump of a tree that was in this dimension. What? They landed with barely any sound, as any trained shinobi should. Boruto's heart was racing each and every moment spent looking at demolished landscape. There is no sight of invaders anywhere. But his father was also missing. Did they fight already? He ignored Uncle Gaara's voice and began searching for any clues that might hint on his father's whereabouts, trying to blink away tears that were threatening to fall from his blue eyes. He wobbled slightly, but steadied himself, turning his gaze downwards and seeing a piece of orange fabric that was stuck underneath a rock over which he almost tripped. Dad, now that you mentioned it, Grandpa used to be a Hokage too, but Dad says that when he was a kid, Grandpa Hokage wasn't even in this world anymore. That means Dad grew up not knowing a thing about this enjoyable father-son situation, didn't he? Dad is the only one who doesn't know what this is like. If he was going to be like this, then it would have been better if he was never here from the beginning. Boruto doesn't know when tears began streaming down his face. His knees hit the ground as small whimpers escaped his lips, as he held shredded piece of his father's jacket like his life depended on it. On outside, Sasuke's face was still stoic as ever, seemingly calculated as it surveyed situation at hand. On inside, however, he was in turmoil with himself. When he stepped through a portal, he noticed that he couldn't sense Naruto's chakra anymore. He wrote it off to a mere moment, but now that he was here it became clear to him. His brother in all but blood either left this dimension and traveled to another one where their six paths connection can reach him, or he shook his head, trying to clear his mind of such thoughts. Jumping to conclusion right now would do him little good. If history taught him anything, then it's that Naruto always manages to get out of difficulty situations and creates a miracle no matter the odds placed against him. I found him. At that very moment did Raikage's booming voice cut throughout barren wasteland. Turning his eyes to his directions, he saw him waving his hands rapidly. Don't worry, Boruto. He's safe. Raikage assured the young boy, with Sasuke noticing exasperated sigh that followed. He's just resting. Sasuke watched Boruto's face go through various emotions, sadness, surprise, relief, and happiness, latter evident by beaming smile stretched across his face, his own lips turning upwards. Sasuke allowed purple chakra avatar to surround both of them as they began floating in the sky. Let's go. It took them little over 20 seconds to arrive at their desired destination. As they hovered above it, Sasuke slowly descended his Susanoo avatar before it disappeared completely in small traces of purple aura as it was never there to begin with. Dad! Boruto sprinted towards his father without a hint of hesitation, with Sasuke slowly tracing behind him. Uchiha's brow quirked slightly as he noticed Boruto's hurried steps coming to a sudden halt. He realized why that is after he reached them. An awkward silence followed. A phantom wind blew through the void dimension as all Kages present had mixed expressions concerning the state of their Hokage. Ramen-chan, Naruto muttered so in deep sleep as he laid on his right hip so that his artificial arm, or lack thereof, was not displayed to small audience gathered around him. Scattered around him were storage seals that could be implemented on one's body or as part of clothing. Kanji on them was similar to Sasuke's wristbands, in which he has sealed shurikens laced with lighting chakra. Knowing fully well how dangerous being carrying the name of Otsutsuki can be, everyone aside from Sasuke expected their fellow Kage to have sealed various weapons and tools necessary for combat. Even if one is seated behind a desk most of the time and isn't on active shinobi duty, doesn't mean that they shouldn't be prepared. For such situation can happen even in this peaceful era. Gathered around Genin turned Kage were dozen instant ramen cups of all kinds of flavor. Really? A weak laugh escaped Chojuro's lips. Idiot! Sasuke let out a soft, exasperated sigh at the sight of his friend's sleeping form and makeshift bed created from earth style. Ramen aside, he is glad that he's safe. Was he really eating ramen in this situation? Kuratsuchi said in a soft voice full of disbelief. Her previous motivated expression at prospect of exciting fight turned sour at the image ahead of her. Where are the enemies? From the looks of it he is fine, albeit tired, which is to be expected considering whose his opponents were. Scanning his surroundings, Sasuke couldn't find a trace of Otsutsuki trio that wreaked havoc upon their village, and yet his onyx eyes narrowed at black diamond-shaped mark that rested on open palm of his friend. Aura it emanated, making him unnerved. It felt similar to cursed seals Orochimaru produced, and yet completely different at the same time. Its shape reminded him of his wife's Byakugo, and for what he could tell from first glance, has similar function. It's more mysterious and dangerous, however. Sasuke began approaching Naruto to wake him up in order to get the full report of the events that transpired, but stopped when he felt movements approaching them. Smoothly sidestepping to the right, he watched Boruto landing feet first on his father's gut, Naruto's face twisted in pain would be hilarious to witness, if not for his son's distressed state. Ga! Hokage jolted up from her structure immediately, holding his stomach in pain from the hit he received. Kurama was laughing his ass off in his mindscape, but Naruto ignored it in favor of dodging a fist that followed. Stupid old man. Talk to him, he heard him advise, his gruff tone losing all humor. Trust me, it's long overdue, your child is hurting. I know, Databeo, I should have done this a long time ago. He raised his left hand as his son's leg impacted it. A loud noise echoing all around them, Boruto backflipped, making a famous cross-shaped seal that made an exact duplicate of him appear in midair from plum of white smoke. His clone took initiative, sending axe kick towards older blonde, which also ended up being inhibited. Be Boruto, he called out, but his son wouldn't listen. Hima, Mom, and I thought you died to those pale bastards, he cried, throwing his punches wildly. Instead of trying to find a way back home to us, you've been eating ramen and sleeping. How should he react to this? How should anyone react to this situation? Boruto really thought his father ended up dying to those Otsutsukis, only to find out that he's alive and well, sleeping after eating countless cups of that hideous excuse of a food. Doesn't he have any sense? Shame to sleep carelessly whilst everyone else back home thought the worst happened to him? Gritting his teeth, Boruto became more and more frustrated with each of his attack getting blocked or dodged. He shouldn't be so surprised about his dad's attitude. He is dad that preferred office work over his own family. Dad that, even when he spends time with them, has to leave shortly with some half-assed claim of entire village being his family and needing him. Dad that broke his man-to-man promise and sent a shadow clone to his own daughter's birthday. Dad that is here. His movements became slow and rigid, seemingly losing all of their strength and accuracy they had few moments ago. I understand that it's hard not having your father around on important days. Boruto stopped his approaches and stood several meters away from his father, staring at his worried face. Blue eyes blinked slowly at first, but soon began to blink rapidly, desperately trying to stop another flow that wanted to leak through from his increasingly puffy eyes. But it's different for you. You have a father that is actually here. And yet he almost lost him. Naruto rushed at his son, kneeling down to his level and wrapped his single arm around him, bringing him into a hug. I'm sorry, Boruto. Boruto sobbed into his shoulder, feeling emotionally exhausted from this day, but incredibly relieved that his dad is alive and well. You should be, stupid old man. He muttered so into his shoulder, initiating few giggles from small audience that watched their interaction, after he separated from him and rubbed his eyes to wipe away few remaining tears. He offered him a small smile, which Naruto returned with his own. We'll be right back. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder as he faced Sasuke and four Kages. We need to have a conversation that is long overdue. All of them had a look of understanding on their faces, with Sasuke sufficing them with a nod. With that done, both of them disappeared in swirl of leaves at seemingly untraceable speed. They were once again back at the battlefield on which Naruto defeated Momoshiki and Kinshiki. Feeling more mentally fatigued than physically, Naruto decided to sit down on an edge of a huge crater, motioning with his remaining hand for his son to do the same. Boruto, his mind now clear and focused, finally took notice of his father's lack of limb and immediately rushed to his side, concern lining his features. Dad! Your arm! Naruto let out a surprised yelp when he got but tackled by Boruto that was looking him over. It got severed during the fight, don't worry about it. How could I not? His son distanced himself after a few more seconds and deadpanned at logic behind his father's statement. You lost an arm. It's a big deal, Databasa. It alright? It could have been a lot worse, you know. Naruto fixed his gaze on his natural, now only one arm, feeling grateful that it didn't sustain any damage in the fight. Soon after those words left his mouth did the Hokage realize where exactly he's gone wrong. He cursed himself inwardly for his stupidity. Panic surged through him upon seeing Boruto averting his eyes downwards, his eyes glistering with barely restrained tears upon registering implication behind his words. Moron, choose your words more carefully. He could hear Kurama's scolding tone echoing inside his head. It would send a wrong message if it was the other one that got severed. He let out a nervous chuckle, hoping against hope to fix this situation. Upon seeing Boruto's perplexed expression, he elaborated. I would have ended up with two bandanged arms. It would look bad for Konoha if they had semi-mummified cripple as their leader. Some might doubt my ability to lead the village if I only had 50% of my limbs. Boruto couldn't help but let out a soft snort as he imagined such scenario. his dad engrossed with paperwork with 2 arms replaced by artificial ones. You would be even more incompetent. No need to be so harsh, the Hokage pouted before noticing that his son wore his old worn-out jacket from childhood. It suits you. Do I look at least bit cooler? Even more than before. Boruto blinked, looking surprised. So you did pay attention to me before? Of course, Naruto responded louder than he intended. Before a look of shame settled upon his features. Boruto, for everything that happened until now, I am truly sorry, Dad. By wanting to protect everyone I ended up ignoring my family. I never tried to understand you and cause pain to you, your mother and sister. The Hokage bashfully rubbed his nape. I was also hypocritical when I tried to scold you for doing pranks and getting into mischief, when I was no better at that age. You also played pranks? Boruto appeared astonished upon such revelation. It was so unforeseen. His strict father that more often than not criticized him for pulling pranks did the same thing? He just never struck him as a person who would get into mischief and behave in such manner. Yet another thing that he doesn't know about his dad. He swore already to change that, and now is perfect time to do so. Yeah, Boruto directed attention to his father. I often painted stupid and idiot on Hokage Monument and terrorized numerous shopkeepers and other villagers that wronged me by vandalizing their establishments and houses. You really went that far? At least 2 times a week, Naruto freely admitted. Look of scorn on their faces were almost unbearable. But as long as I got attention, no matter what kind, I was fine with it. Why would you go to such extremes to get attention from random villagers? Because Naruto unintentionally hesitated. Nobody could fault him for that, however. His childhood was anything but easy. Constant stares and whispering that followed him since he was a toddler left a huge toll on his psyche, even if he didn't show it until his teenhood. Such treatment caused him to develop split personality at some point that he barely managed to overcome, and then eventually accept. Naruto always acknowledged that for quite a while he operated on a gray line of his integrity and hatred that was manifesting itself over time deep inside his subconsciousness. One wrong move, one mistake, or one bad day could have pushed him over the edge. Human's mind is a fragile thing, especially at such a young age. Sasuke was a perfect example of that. Even on spiritual level they are 2 sides of the same coin. Sasuke being yin to his yang. Looking at how his spiritual brother was back then, Naruto wondered how it would be if their roles were reversed. Drowned in darkness with intent to destroy everyone who wronged him in his childhood as the only goal, Naruto knew that entire village would suffer. He is positive that Kurama, being vengeful as he was back then, would gladly capitalize on his trauma and emotional weakness, urging him to break the seal. His father and mother would interfere, of that he's certain. However, if they would be able to guide him from that path is a completely different story. His mom, being high-temper as any Uzumaki, would try to beat him senseless as a last resort. Even if they use force to stop him and Kurama is sealed again, nothing would prevent Naruto from doing it again. After all, his father and mother's chakra were limited for one use. His death, followed by Kurama's freedom and Konoha's destruction, 4th war would possibly happen, and even if it doesn't, Black Zetsu would somehow manage to convey Obito to revive Madara, who would cast Infinite Tsukuyomi and eventually get backstabbed, reviving Kaguya that would rule over this realm indefinitely. Until others arrive, Naruto thought, his lips set into a grim line. He is positive that Momoshiki and Kinshiki, even with the help of the 3rd one, wouldn't be able to defeat Kaguya that would amass even more chakra over time. But others are something else entirely if Momoshiki's words are anything to go by. Naruto rubbed his scalp, deciding to put thoughts of inevitable alien invasion aside for the time being. He is weighing his options right now. Naruto rarely, if ever, wanted to talk about his grim childhood, but Sasuke said it the best when they spoke about him mentoring Boruto. His son doesn't know him, or better yet, the Naruto he used to be. He knows rumors and stories circling around elemental nations, but never did his father sat him down and told him stories of old. Naruto felt incredibly remorseful upon having such thought. Part of the reason why he never told stories of the past to Boruto was because he didn't want to put all that extra pressure on him. Naruto always felt bad upon hearing his son being compared to him, and as a result feeling inferior, even if he was more talented and skilled when they were the same age. Boruto learned wind and lighting style in academy by the time he was 10. Even Kakashi acknowledged his power and praised him for his skills. That Boruto mentioned even furthers his already great potential. Naruto at the age of 10 managed to only create a clone that was at brink of death the moment it poofed into existence. There is no comparison when it comes in terms of skill and potential. His son exceeds him by far. He taught him basics because, being slightly naive, he thought he wouldn't need more. They were living in an era of peace where bloodshed the past shinobi conducted would not happen again. And it won't. Naruto will make sure of that. But otherworldly threats? Gods, aliens, different dimensions? That's a whole different story. They need to be ready for the worst, even if he doesn't want his child to experience war. At any rate, Naruto already promised himself that he would make it up to him, Hinata and Himawari. And what better way to do so than to share part of his past, no matter how grim it is or how uncomfortable he may be while telling it. Naruto has sneaking suspicion that being so close to death after combating 2 Otsutsuki threats alone made him so bold. People often say that when one is close to death their entire life flashed before their eyes. That is far from the truth. Naruto in that final clash between Razengans saw the most important things in his life. His comrades and friends were present, of course, but his family was the center of it. He decided, his son is a smart and mature shinobi and it is high time he starts to treat him as such. Seemingly minutes passed during his internal decision-making, while in reality only 10 seconds went by. Letting out a soft sigh, Naruto resolved himself one last time, because they were the only one that took notice of me. Even if it was bad kind of attention. Quirked brow was his only response. You studied about Biju and Jinchuriki during your time at the academy? Boruto had a look of realization upon hearing his question. It was a short part of our curriculum, but we did study about them. You have Kyuubi inside of you. No, he corrected himself. It's Kurama? Naruto gave a nod. That's right. But back then, due to tension between villages and people of elemental nations' inability, fear and reluctance to understand them, there was deep prejudice against them. Boruto listened on, feeling of dread forming and put on his stomach as he slowly began to grasp implication behind his father's words. Sage of the Six Paths created Biju from remnants of Otsutsuki Kaguya's chakra. Before his death, the sage and his followers built temples in 9 different regions of the world where they could live and be protected. The Biju were originally created not only to prevent the Jubis and to extension Kaguya's resurrection, but also to maintain and balance peace. But it didn't work out like that. His son interrupted as he fiddled with a stone he found nearby in order to calm his rising nerves. Kaguya was revived in 4th Great Ninja War. But we managed to stop her, Naruto told him and continued his tale. Over the centuries, humanity failed to recognize the Biju as sapient individuals, instead seeing them only as monsters, demons, or mindless beasts worthy of fear and disdain, because of their immense power. They were sought out by humans to be used as weapons in times of war. The beasts resented this treatment, and came to hate humans, at times willingly becoming the monsters they were viewed as. In order to harness their power, the villages began sealing them into humans, creating their own Jinchuriki. Phantom wind softly blew upon desolated planet. After his explanation concluded, Boruto felt heavy lump bury itself in his throat as he assimilated information given to him. If Biju were feared, then same could be said for their containers. He was afraid to ask out of discomfort he felt about such subject and about his dad's own unwillingness to talk about his past. But he almost lost him, a fact that still leaves him unnerved. Dad himself realized that, which is why he reached out to him now. Listen, Boruto, your father was full of weaknesses. He was a good for nothing, but he pulled himself up with his own strength and became Hokage. You don't need to understand who Naruto is now. You need to know the Naruto who made it all the way here. Remembering Sasuke-san's words, Boruto decided to press on. As Kurama's Jinchuriki you suffered the same animosity from the villagers? Every day, Naruto freely admitted. There was no going back now. With another hefty sigh, he pulled himself back from the edge of a crater and crossed his legs, his son following right after, eagerness and empathy painting his features. Kurama was forced to attack village on day of my birth after he was released from my mother, Kushina, who was the previous Jinchuriki. Many people died, my mom and dad included, and Kurama was sealed into me. You never met your parents? Hokage's son asked in a low tone. Regret accompanied his question as he remembered rude comments he made about his grandfather. He knew that they died when his dad was very young, but he was never told that he never met them. Only chakra imprints they left in the seal that was supposed to keep Kurama at bay, and during the war through the usage of Kenjutsu, he explained. I was about 4 or 5 years old when my status as a Jinchuriki was outed to the public, It happened so suddenly. The wariness they adopted whenever I was around them, contempt and disdain they showed me confused me, and I often wondered what I did wrong to deserve such treatment. Children weren't aware of it, but their parents still forbade them from playing with me, with great exception on Nara Shikaku. Aside from a Chiraku family and occasionally Shikamaru and Choji, for the most part of my childhood I was always alone. He can still recall it clearly. He sat on that swing alone, watching other kids playing with each other and being with their parents with happiness and joy blooming upon their faces. Naruto always envied them and often wondered how it's like to have a family to come home to. It makes it all that tragic that now he neglected what he gained. How did you do it? Boruto clenched his fist, tightening fabric of his pants under his firm grip. Naruto looked at his son, his eyes reflecting sympathy and regret. How did you manage to overcome their mistreatment of you? Weren't you angry at them? Without a doubt, Databeo. He ran a hand through his short blonde hair. To be honest, I drifted for some time. I almost ended up turning against everyone. But, his eyes averted upwards, staring at the red sky, I formed bonds. I could have taken a path of vengeance and hatred upon them, and it would be easier to do so, but that would in turn make me a hypocrite no matter how justified it would seem. He remembered a person that shaped his Nindo. Back in my Genin days, our first mission was to escort Bridge Builder to the Land of Waves. There I met a boy named Haku that was adorned with great misfortune throughout his life. An orphan like me. After losing his parents, he was found by a person that decided to take him in. When we met, he told me that a person becomes truly strong when they have something important to protect, which greatly impacted me. I chose to treasure what I had and I took his advice to heart, and even if he isn't with us, I still remember it to this day. He sounds like a nice guy, Boruto admitted, understanding indication behind Haku's fate and why his dad remembered his advice even after all these years. With such hand dealt to him from birth, he really suffered. No wonder he treasured everyone. He was the coolest. You said that entire village is your family? Was Haku one of the people that inspired you? Naruto remained silent for a while, dropping his gaze while his lips twitched upwards. Of course, Databeo. He stood up and declared resolutely, to never give up on my word because that's my ninja way. Boruto couldn't help but smile and be inspired by such declaration. It almost felt like something out of Kajimasa movies he often watched. I should have told you all this sooner. I'm really sorry for breaking my word by not coming home for Himawari's birthday, neglecting you. No, Boruto interjected as he stood up and faced his father. I do expect you to make it up to Himawari. But the truth is, that I always wanted to know. I don't know much about you, Dad. Deep down I knew that all those stories I heard about you weren't exaggerated. My pride just wouldn't allow me to ask you about it. It's hard, Databasa, always being compared to you. Even when I accomplish something with my efforts, they say it is expected and that I ride Hokage's coattails. I feel like people only see me as your son and nothing more. I'm not you. That's right, you're not me, Naruto honestly said, adopting more serious expression. Boruto looked dejected, thinking of his comment as an insult. That isn't a bad thing. Quite the opposite actually. A strong hand clasped on his shoulder as he locked his eyes with his father's. You can only be you, and in some ways you are even better than I would. You are well behaved to others and have more potential than I had at your age. Your mother and I would support you regardless of your choices, even if you didn't choose to become a shinobi. It's okay to take inspiration from someone, but above all else you need to forge your own path in life. Think of what you want to do, Boruto. You were always upfront with your feelings and decided to do things your way. I heard how you managed to prove in academy that you are more than my son. Don't listen to negative things others say to you. I never did, and it turned out great. I accomplished many things some would say are remarkable. I became Hokage. But most importantly, after my troublesome past I managed to rise above it, and have you, Boruto. Upon hearing such words he felt numerous feelings ranging from happiness to relief. His vision blurred a little. Really? He asked in a small voice, wiping at small tears that managed to pass through. Really, my family is the best thing that ever happened to me. For that I'll always be grateful, and from now on I promise to show it more. Boruto smiled at that, but after all that occurred tried to be more sensible and understanding of his father's position. It's okay if you're busy with Hokage work, but if not often, I want you to be there for important days, maybe even tell me more about your past. He gestured around. I highly doubt you managed to get so strong to defeat those two only by eating ramen and sitting around all day. Naruto laughed heartily. Of course I did. Ramen is beautiful creation sent from heavens that binds us all and gives us strength when we need it. No need to be so dramatic, database. His son's sweat dropped at his antics. Ramen is okay once in a while. Diversity is a spice of life, as Chocho would say, especially when she's referring to food. His dad doesn't understand that and treats it as a divinity. Boruto is sure that there is a story behind it, and he will eventually ask him about it. But are you sure? Boruto returned his attention to his dad. It really is a long story. Naruto warned playfully. He extended his hand, his fist tightened and conviction shining in his eyes that wasn't present that last time Boruto tried to convince him. Man-to-man promise? They fist bumped. Naruto prepared himself, with Boruto doing the same, and in an instant they were once again before four Kages and Sasuke. That was quick, Kuratsuchi commented with a small frown. She seemed still upset about this situation. Although you have to be the expert. Naruto rubbed his head bashfully at that. Ease up, Tsuchikage Dano, Mizuki said with a smile. You can't really fault Hokage Dano for fighting them to protect the rest of us. Let me mope in peace, please, she huffed at Chojuro's words, resulting in a chuckle from the young Kage. First major fight in 15 years and I missed it. Sorry, Naruto bashfully rubbed his head. One should not seek war, especially during era of peace, Gaara advised. Yeah, I know. Kuratsuchi waved her hand in defense. Naruto took note of her contentious tone. At any rate, it seems or rather your work here is done. But can you inform us what exactly happened here? He didn't like it one bit. Sensing rising tension, Reikage decided to say something about it. I know this might not be ideal place, but a quick summary should suffice. Darui added his 2 cents. No doubt that you are tired after this ordeal, but you must realize how this looks to the rest of us. Boruto frowned at this, but kept his lips shut. He doesn't want to intervene and add unnecessary fuel to the fire. Naruto exchanged a glance with Sasuke, catching a skeptic look in his eye. He did notice Kuratsuchi's demanding demeanor, but he couldn't help but admit that it is justified to some degree. From intel Sasuke gathered, Kaguya was afraid of these two, and he defeated both of them after taking a tailed beast bomb to the face. Naruto is known worldwide due to his contributions in the war, and 2 years later against Tonari, he had to admit that regardless of his pacifist nature and his desire to help world through unity, some countries are frightened by his power, with some smaller ones even calling him a tyrant. It really is ironically sad, since Naruto poured his efforts in helping smaller countries because of Nagato. He never wanted them to be so displeased. But it still happened. Fiasco with scientific ninja tool being outed before he had a chance to properly showcase it to others, and now Mamoshiki's attack only worsened his image in eyes of other villages. Naruto knows he can always have faith in Gaara and Darui since he is on great relations with A and B. Kuratsuchi on the other hand displayed a competitive side to her similar to her grandfather, and he can't help but notice that Chojuro also seemed uneased by all of this, albeit to a lesser degree. Rightfully so, but it still hurts to be reason others are afraid. Such thing is similar to his childhood. But despite that, Naruto still can't help but place his trust in people. Your inventions and naive misplaced trust you have in people will only prove to be your downfall in the end. Mamoshiki's ominous warning echoed in his mind. He hated how it made sense. I can't fault none of you for that, Naruto began after clearing his throat. So what do you want to know? How did you exactly? Kuratsuchi seemed like she wanted to choose proper words to ask her question. They tied me to a tree and began extracting Kurama from me, but had a hard time doing it, Naruto explained. Eventually I broke free, fired a raisin shuriken, but it got absorbed by bigger one Kinshiki. Through use of his chakra weapons, both of them could absorb jutsu, and Mamoshiki could unleash it with twice its original power, but had harder time doing it with shadow clones, which is why I use classic divide and conquer strategy. Shadow clones are fast and nimble, so they couldn't afford leaving themselves open for an potentially fatal attack hole absorbing them, Gaara deducted. Exactly, Naruto snapped his finger and pointed at his friend. Even if they used Rinnegan, I overwhelmed them eventually through trickery and unpredictability. Kinshiki was tougher of the two, but both he and Mamoshiki weren't up to par with Kaguya, Madara, or even Obito in their Ten Tails form. Cryptanalysis team managed to decipher part of Kaguya's scroll. Sasuke's voice spoke up. It would seem that she wrote it before she took the god fruit. In that case it made sense why she was afraid of them. It is an assumption. But Kaguya must have been weaker than them before she ate the fruit if she went through such efforts to stop them, Chojuro explained. Then a morbid thing happened. This gathered attention of everyone present. Momoshiki turned Kinshiki into a fruit and ate him. What? Boruto couldn't help but exclaim. They were both wounded and Kinshiki willingly gave up his life for him. He went through a transformation of some sorts. His chakra grew exponentially, and he explained that this is the law of Otsutsuki clan. Kuratsuchi turned to her fellow Kages. So she was supposed to become food for those guys. A chill went through her spine. She can't believe they are supposed to deal with these cannibalistic extraterrestrials. Or fruit was supposed to be delivered to them in the first place. Sasuke theorized. Their clan most likely operate in manner similar to hierarchy system. It is a worthy conclusion based of information gathered, Gaara said and looked at Naruto. Thank you for your efforts. I know that it wasn't easy. That it wasn't, Naruto smiled. I'm just glad it's over. At least it wasn't dull, Derry said, and they had to laugh at that pun. Space-time ninjutsu really gives you a headache. Teleporting from one location to another discombobulates everyone that use it as a mean of transportation. Unlike Shunshin, that is a high-speed movement in same dimension. Your entire perception gets thrown off as you travel between different worlds with this jutsu. Sasuke got accustomed to it as he uses the technique frequently. But others weren't so lucky. Side effects last for few short seconds, but it can still be unpleasant. Destroyed planet was left behind in favor of his home. Soft sunlight graced his features as he felt his feet land on solid tiles of Hokage Mansion. He looked up, seeing various faces of his friends and family, their expression varying from confused, relieved and happy. Before he had time to say anything, a dark blur slammed into him and wrapped her hands around his waist. Papa, your arm! Her blue eyes shimmered with barely restrained tears. It's fine, it was a fake one. I miss you, Hima, he softly said, kneeling down and embracing her with his lone arm. I'm really sorry for missing your birthday. She stood back and shook her head, causing her dark hair to softly swish in the wind. I'm just glad that you made it home safe. I understand that your job is important. It's fine. No, it's not. He planted a soft kiss on her forehead. I should have been with all of you, especially during important days. I promise you now that I will be home more often. Really? Himawari asked in a hopeful tone that made him feel all that worse for neglecting her. Of course, after things settle, we will start by spending an entire day as a family to celebrate your and Boruto's birthday. He grinned. It will be fun, Dadabayo. Thank you, Papa! She exclaimed ecstatically. Boruto. With tears in her eyes, Hinata rushed towards her son and hugged him firmly. Are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? Mom, relax, I'm fine, he assured her, returning the hug. We didn't even get to fight enemies. Dad took care of it before we got there. He did? She stood back and observed her firstborn that had a proud expression on his face. It took everyone by surprise. He looked in their direction, saying his dad and sister interact. Dad really is amazing, isn't he? He always was, she remembered with a fond smile, even more so than his strength. Your father's optimism, determination and love towards his friends made everyone want to follow him and be by his side. Boruto's face was scrunched up in thought as he registered his mom's words. The way she said it almost sounds like, it's almost like you. Hinata's voice spoke again. Boruto has to admit that it was scary. Not to be compared to his dad, he had time to reflect on his dad and his own actions in the last day. But the way she seemingly read his mind, it's uncanny. After a few moments, Boruto dismissed it as a coincidence. But as Mitsuki noted from his and Shikadai's behavior, mothers are scary. So it's really up in the air. I guess that we're similar, but not the same. His mother stated, you might have inherited his heart and boisterous attitude, but as your grandfather said, in terms of prodigious talent and your insightfulness, you are more like Niji Nizan and Yandame-sama. He mentioned something like that. Boruto's smile turned slightly strained. Dad really suffered in his childhood. Silence reigned after his statement, with only faint voices of people chattering on the balcony being heard. Oh, Hinata's lips were pressed into a thin line. I suppose he told you. After her son nodded, she led him away to the railings of the balcony overseeing the Enider village. Dark clouds mostly cleared as sun shined even brighter than before. Boruto found such views symbolic. Considering that threat passed and life can continue with sense of normalcy. He is reluctant about his past. Even to me, he doesn't really want to talk about it. From what he told you, you can conclude yourself why that is, she began. Boruto understood that now. It's no wonder why he isn't willing to talk about his past, when his present is infinitely better and brighter. He still feels that he has a right to know about it, and he's thankful that his dad told him, no matter how difficult that may have been for him. Boruto now understands him better. Your dad had a tragic childhood. He was ostracized for things he couldn't control and was hated by majority of the village. In spite of that, he rose above it and was always straightforward in his beliefs and dreams. He was relatable to me, because as the heiress I was under extreme pressure from my clan. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't live up to their expectations. That's awful, he said. Was that during the time Grandpa was stricter? It was wartime, so it was expected. An incident in the past forced Grandpa to adopt such demeanor. I was shy and meek and couldn't do anything right. But looking at Naruto's optimistic attitude, I eventually became inspired by him and tried harder. He had that effect on many even then? She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. Of course, it's one of the reasons why I fell in love with him. Mom? He blinked in shock and gained a sly smile. You were in love with Dad ever since you were a kid? She stammered, looking embarrassed as ever. She shouldn't have said that. Were you dating since then? Well, he had a crush on Sarada's mother, and then had a first and second kiss with Sarada's father. There was incident with some crazy woman that wanted to suck all his chakra out through a kiss, and then he almost married the kunoichi of Nadeshiko village. Hinata inwardly monologued with a sweat drop. Naruto really did charm a lot of women during his youth, albeit unknowingly. Her face darkened as she recalled yet another one that came along, and had audacity to ask then her fiancé to impregnate her because of some foolish promise he made 4 years prior that he wasn't even aware what it entailed. Cheyenne, that dumb bitch. Boruto fidgeted nervously and Hinata realized she spoke that last part aloud. So that's a no? Hinata merely smiled as she and her son moved towards her husband. I took care of it. Oh, Boruto left it at that and moved to greet his sister. Thank goodness you're okay. She rested her head on his chest, tears from before gathering once again. Are you hurt? That's supposed to be my line. She looked up as Naruto wiped tears that stained her face. You are the one who fought them and now you barely stand. Well, Kurama did say I'm rusty. To say the least, deep voice from within echoed. Naruto chose to ignore that comment for the time being. Besides, I had worse, he said. That's not so reassuring. She stared with a smile on her beautiful features and looked him over. At any rate, we need to get you checked up. Hinata, I need to tea. Later, she interrupted. You are injured and this is not a time nor place for it. Naruto complied reluctantly. Okay, well at least it isn't your original arm. Sakura tried to find positive in the situation. All things considered, it could have been worse. I guess, Naruto simply replied as he was set on bed shirtless, his dirty and damaged orange jacket discarded as Sakura removed small remains of his artificial arm. They weren't only ones in the room. Kakashi was across from him, nonchalantly sitting with crossed legs as he read his favorite book. Sasuke was by the window overlooking the village with indifferent expression with Shikamaru by his side. Hinata helped Sakura out a bit, and then took kids back home in order for them to rest. This day was emotionally exhausting for all of them, and both he and his wife didn't want them to overwhelm themselves even more. They protested, but eventually relented after he assured them that he will be home soon. We won't have that here. Sakura grew a tick mark as she admonished Shikamaru, who pulled another cigarette from his box. No smoking allowed. Either go outside or go through the window. With a huff and quiet mutterings of troublesome under his breath, Shikamaru opened a window and went outside through it. This room was connected to a small balcony, so Shikamaru leaned next to a window so that he could be a part of discussion that will be held soon. He searched his pants for a lighter and cursed when he couldn't find any, inwardly berating himself for misplacing it in all of this mess. This really is a bad day. Small orange light caught his attention and he turned his head to it. Seeing tip of Sasuke's finger burning in fire chakra, saying his thanks, Shikamaru inclined his head through a window and inhaled deeply, savoring burning sensation in his chest. All done, she nodded, placing all that was left of Hashirama arm in disposable container. Kakashi's book closed shut. Sasuke I gained focus and Shikamaru looked over his shoulder, listening intently while at the same time appearing as nonchalant smoker. It's time for business. Sakura, can you please stay here? Naruto requested, earing and questioning look from Pink Kunoichi. We need your opinion on the matter. Fine, she agreed. Naruto looked at every occupant of the room, or in Shikamaru's case, outside of it. He took a deep breath and began retelling the tale of how he fought Otsutsuki, how their clan operated by sacrificing themselves for power, and eventually how he managed to defeat them. So there are others, huh? Kakashi muttered, concern evident in his eyes. Without a doubt, I don't think he would be dishonest for the heck of it, especially at his deathbed. Naruto answered. If what he said was true and there really are others out there, they will find out about Momoshiki and Kinshiki's demise, Sasuke grimly stated, expression mirrored by others, not to mention that third one. Urashiki is still out there, so there won't be much time if he informs them. Kakashi finished that trail of thought. Unless they decide to humor us like they did for the past 1,000 years, time is of the essence. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful look on his face as he stroked his chin. But I feel that there is more to that. Kakashi-sensei, are you saying that they intentionally didn't come sooner? Sakura asked. It is more than likely, he responded to his former student. Such theory unnerve everyone. That would mean that they kept eye on them, but for whatever reason decided not to act on it. Either that, or they were preoccupied with other planets. Shikamaru decided to speak, but it is not so likely because, if they searched for chakra all these years, a planet with billions of people that have chakra would attract them and be their top priority. Sasuke nodded at his reasoning. Chakra of all Biju are incredibly potent, and Naruto did mention that Momoshiki when he ate Kinshiki still seemed overall weaker than Kaguya. Kinshiki seemed like an experienced warrior that only gained said experience through battle. From that we can conclude that they harvested planets for quite some years now. If our planet is richer with chakra than others, why wait so long to come here? After Sasuke's comment, Naruto glanced at his hand, 4-point black diamond-shaped mark reflecting his narrowed blue eyes. He wordlessly lifted his hand, displaying it for everyone to see. Sakura's hand unconsciously went to her forehead, tracing a mark of similar shape. One more thing to it: just before Momoshiki died, we found ourselves in an astral plane of some sorts. Astral plane? Kakashi recalled his experience with Obito during the war, like a limbo? Something like that, Naruto confirmed, placing his hand down and putting on a white shirt Sakura gave him. He said, and I quote, "Remember this. Those who defeat gods cannot remain ordinary individuals." Then my final Rasengan continued, shot him up in the sky and finally killed him. After that this diamond mark was on my palm. Silence reigned after his explanation, each Konoha citizen thinking over implications behind Otsutsuki's actions. It soon came to a halt. Transfer of power, huh? Shikamaru, Sakura and Kakashi turned their attention to Sasuke, an unconscious twitch to his jaw. Kurama confirmed it. He could sense a third presence in my body. Kakashi let out a sigh. It seems that problems always have to follow no matter which era. What once were tensions between hidden villages are now fights with gods and occasional drug lords. This incident being one of the few Ninja Academy didn't prepare them for, based on intel gathered. A theory puzzled itself quickly in his head. An alien body snatcher gave his power to Naruto with obvious malicious intent. From his recap of events that transpired in different dimension, this Momoshiki decided to bestow mark to him because he isn't ready for others. Rokudaime had no doubts that it is half-truth at best. There has to be more to it than what, and he is willing to bet his restored left eye to it. From looks hence all others have, they too came to same conclusion. Shikamaru exhaled deeply and threw filter on the ground and stomped on it with much more force than needed. It isn't fair at all. Such bad luck always following Naruto, and now after everything he endured that cycle had to repeat itself again. Damn it, Sakura scoffed, agitated at this development. Naruto had to suffer with burden of being Kurama's Jinchuriki for good 17 years of his life. He lost himself countless time in that power and almost lost his life because of it. Now he runs risk of the same damn thing happening because of Momoshiki. Sakura doesn't want her friend to get hurt and go through that horrible sensation of essentially being trapped inside your own body. Now only to a much greater scale as creature from same clan as Kaguya is somehow third occupant of his being. She doesn't want to see him hurt. It is a sentiment everyone here shares. Sakura, she turned her head to the left. Hearing the voice of her husband calling her, he seemed sharp and determined, even more so than usually. This might be groundless hypothesis, but is it possible that there is some connection between Naruto's mark and your Byakugo seal? Shikamaru took a long inhale from his second cigarette, courtesy of Sasuke's fire jutsu. It is a common shape, but at this point in time we really can't rule anything out. That is actually the reason why I asked you to stay, Sakura-chan, Naruto admitted. I know it's a long shot, but everything might help. Sakura pursued her lips, going through her memories to find something of relevance that might link both of their marks. Tsunade Shusho did say that Byakugo has poorly understood history. She gathered attention of others. Her eyes widened at thought that popped into her head. It is only a few things that does make sense in this jumbled mess that became their lives in the last day and a half. Gathering he bearings, she continued. She said that it is an old jutsu, dating back to the era of Sage of Six Paths. How can that be? The Hokage asked Kyoshi. That was on their minds. I thought Bachan created Byakugo seal. Sakura shook her head, causing her pink strands to swish about. I know why you might think so, but Shursho got idea from her grandmother Uzumaki Mito that had a similar seal. Beyond that, she acquired some old scrolls, and from them she managed to form the Byakugo that is known today. Such rich history, Shikamaru muttered, stroking his goatee. Implications of that are dreadful. Naruto stood up and went to a nearby water machine and poured himself a glass of cold liquid, chugging it in one go and washing away dryness in his throat. Does that mean that another one existed without Satsuki's seal? He rubbed his temple, feeling incoming headache. This is too much for anyone to bear. His sensei, seeing his student in such state, decided to intervene. Kakashi waved his hand lazily and stretched himself from long period of sitting in the chair. Crisis was averted for now. It's been a long day, and I suppose I can say for everyone that we need some well-deserved rest. Seconded Shikamaru through what has to be a fifth filter by now. Naruto made a mental note to talk about his smoking habits. He turned to him. I will deal with what's left of the paperwork. Go and be with your family. Thanks, I owe you one. You owe me a bunch. Sakura giggled at that and Sasuke smirked. His advisor shined away from the balcony and Kakashi soon followed with a final goodbye. I will get home to Sarada. Sole female of former Team 7 informed them. I know you two want to talk alone for a while, but don't take too long. Naruto, you specifically need to get proper rest. She closed the door behind them. She knows us so well, Databao. That she does. Two brothers/friends/rivals stood alone in the room, and Blonde dropped into nearby bed. Leaning on his knees, Sasuke placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Did Kurama mention anything else? He can feel his chakra, but he doesn't manifest himself. He is still on the lookout. It's all too much to take in. Zetsu incident was the biggest problem we had to deal with recently, and now this happens. It's exhausting. Since when did you lose your fortitude? Since I have to sit by the desk 20 hours a day. Naruto let out a heavy sigh. It's good helping the village, but sometimes I really wish to relax and just be there with my wife and kids. You have that chance now. I guess. He looked him. What about you? Sasuke frowned, turning his gaze to the window. Urashiki is still out there, and with Seal Mamashiki left on you, there is one other person aside from Godame that can have some information about it. That would be great and all, but it's fine to take it easy sometimes. Sasuke looked at him doubtfully. That caused a twitch in his eye. I know that I'm not the best example of it, but I learned my lesson. Although I could have done that without fighting aliens and having my kid jump on my stomach. Sasuke snorted before he remembered something. Speaking of, I hear that Mizukage vouched for Boruto. He said that due to his efforts in stopping Kudietan Kiri and his unusual approach in exams, his punishment will be less severe. He will still be suspended for 2 months, after which he will go through probation and then be reinstated as genin. I mean, it wasn't right for me or anyone to demote him from shinobi rank because he cheated and used trickery, a prime example of what shinobi is. I'm surprised that nobody aside from you noticed. Our security needs to improve, Databao. What makes you think I knew? Because you are too sharp to miss something like that. At any rate, you had your reasons for not outing him, and all things considered, it turned out for the best. Even if the times change, soul of shinobi remains the same, Sasuke said. Even more so than trickery and cheating, your son has potential to be a strong shinobi. One that may surpass even us. Something other Kages picked up on. Without a doubt, the Hokage agreed readily. Thank you again for taking care of him. You helped me with Sarada, so it was the least I could do. Besides, I saw a bit of myself in Boruto when he tried to get your approval. I just couldn't ignore it. Naruto hummed, otherwise staying silent. Sasuke's troubles in his childhood and wanting to get acknowledgement and respect of Fugaku was something he didn't disclose with anyone, he and Sakura being only people that knew of it. They both looked through the window, seeing the twilight approaching. Sakura-chan mentioned that my arm will be ready in days' time, Naruto casually mentioned. Medical science advanced rapidly in over 15 years, and what would usually last weeks or even months can now be done in days. I was thinking that, Naruto, it would be a good thing, he continued. It's been 15 years. You will have more chakra for your dimensional traveling, and you won't have to restrict yourself to one arm. Seeing that he is still unsure, Naruto pressed on. You won't be out of chakra all the time. That earned him a glare. Don't give me that look. It's true, against such opponents, we need to use everything we got. You already redeemed yourself, Sasuke. You are the one that informed us of other Otsutsuki out there and our most valuable asset to the world. Without you, I would be trapped in other dimension and I wouldn't be able to do a thing about it. Shadow of Konoha contemplated the request. He knew that Naruto was determined than ever to protect the world against Otsutsuki threats, and if Momoshiki's words hold even a shred of merit, they really will need everything they got. I will think about it. For Naruto, that was a start. Few beats of silence passed before he spoke again. This match I won. Sasuke quirked a brow at that. It was their little game to compete at everything ever since they were in Genin squad together. They resemble Kakashi and Guy in that way, from eating, drinking, kunai practice, or even silly things such as who can hold their breath longer. Right now they were tied. I wasn't even competing. Duh. Naruto snapped wide, a grin on his face. Because I won, Databeo. Shadow of Konoha sighed good-naturedly, smile visible from corner of Naruto's eye. Your logic to this day astounds me. They both laughed at that. I'm home. Naruto strolled into his home and took off his shoes, setting them aside in the corner of the room. He heard noise coming from the kitchen and made his way towards it, and saw his wife at hard work. Hey Hinata, he greeted her, giving her a soft kiss. Where are the kids? The moment we came back home I noticed how tired they were, so I sent them to bed, she responded, turning down the stove. Dinner will be done soon, so I will wake them up then. Hinata placed a finger on her lower lip, scrutinizing every meal she's preparing. It's funny how a simple motion can still make someone so beautiful. Cream stew is done. Dumplings as well. Kakuni will be soon. She looked at him regretfully, snapping him from his thoughts. I didn't have ingredients for ramen. I'm sorry. He waved his hand frantically. Don't apologize. I love everything you cook. Naruto shifted awkwardly in his seat. Although, recently I wasn't here to try it that often, Databeo. No, you weren't. Hinata wiped her hands and sat on the chair opposite of her husband. This conversation was long overdue. I have a lot of amends to make, Hinata. I am sorry? Naruto turned his head downwards. I've been a terrible husband and dad lately. She shook her head almost immediately after those words left his lips. Hinata took his hand into her own and looked at him, white eyes reflecting his blue ones with steel-hard strictness. You had your reasons that are valid and understandable to some degree. That doesn't make you bad father or husband. If anything, you didn't have your priorities straightened and teach GNGS turned out is such a bad way. Reemergence of white Setsu put everyone in state of panic, and as a Hokage you had to act on your duty. Former Hyuga heiress adopted a frown on her beautiful features. However, I won't lie and tell you that what you did on Himawari and Boruto's birthday was okay. It wasn't. You should have spared an hour or two and actually be there with us. It was hurtful and yet truthful nonetheless. Naruto admitted that he had it coming. I've known you since childhood and we've been married for 13 years. Whatever it's training or life in general, if you make a mistake you do your best to correct it. She smiled with a tilt of her head. This time it isn't any different, no? Naruto beamed and declared passionately. Of course not, Tabeo. I promise to make it up to all of you. We will have a day for Boruto and Himawari's birthday to celebrate it properly. She chuckled at his behavior. Even if he matured over the years, he still is that same Naruto from long ago. I know we will. They heard sound of footsteps and turned their head just in time to see Boruto, and Himawari walked into the room. His daughter rushed at him the moment she saw him. Papa! They hugged. Did everything turn out okay? Boruto asked as he took a sip from his water. Dinner is just done, Hinata informed them as she began setting the table. Himawari right behind him. Let me help. No need to push yourself, Boruto said in a teasing voice. Old man such as yourself needs all rest he can get. I am still in prime of my youth, Databeo. Rusty. Shut up, Kurama! Naruto screamed inwardly. Uchiha Shin. Those two words shut down every argument he could possibly have. Kurama and Sakura-chan to this day won't allow him and Sasuke to forget it. Enjoy this, he said in a softer tone. You deserve it. Thanks, Kurama, Naruto responded with a grin. Soon table was set with plate, utensils and meals set on appropriate spot. Dinner was served, and after such a long day it really is a sight to behold. Thank you for the meal. They chorused and began eating. This was what Naruto always wanted ever since he was a child. Maybe even more so than Hokage position. A place to call home and to belong to. A loving family that will always be there for him. Naruto resolved himself that he will again always be there for them. he won't be distant to them anymore. He doesn't care about Otsutsuki or people who bear their mark. If they want to endanger their hard-fought peace that many sacrifice themselves to achieve, Naruto will be sure to stop them. Future is in hands of next generation, but with his comrades he will continue to build towards it and make it as bright as possible.